I used to think the worst sound at 2:13 a.m. was silence. Silence means your phone died, the dog is asleep, and you're the only one awake to hear the house breathe. But that night, what I heard was a click, not a creak, not pipes, a click, the soft plastic snap of a light switch coming from my hallway closet. I was in a rented townhome outside Columbus. Small place, 2 bedrooms, drywall, thin enough to hear neighbors sneeze. I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the TV muted, a true crime doc frozen on a paused frame, popcorn bowl on my chest, glass of water sweating on a coaster. Normal, safe, boring. Then, click, I held my breath and looked toward the hallway. The closet door was shut, but a pale slice of light bled from the bottom. Thin, unmistakable. I told myself I'd left it on earlier. I told myself I was half asleep, that old houses do weird things, that motion sensors glitch, that bulbs hum. I told myself a lot of things in 3 seconds. None of them felt true. My dog, Penny, didn't bark. She barely lifted her head, tail thumping once against the rug. That almost calmed me, almost, until I realized she was staring at the hallway too, head tilted, listening. I stood up slow, bones loud, air colder than it should have been. I thumbed the TV remote just to give the room a human sound again. Voices, canned music, anything to drown out the way my heart was punching my ribs. The closet sat at the end of the hall between the bathroom and the guest room. Coats of vacuum, holiday junk, nothing worth stealing. If somebody had broken in and crawled inside, why hide there? Why turn on the light? I took the heavy glass from the coaster. Not a weapon, but it made my hand feel less empty. I walked down the hall, socked feet whispering over the laminate. The light under the door sharpened with each step. I stopped with my ear an inch from the wood. Nothing. Then, just behind the quiet, something else. A slow, wet breath, like someone trying not to breathe at all. The knob was warm, my thumb pressed down, and from the other side of that thin, painted door, a voice I didn't recognize whispered my name, like it had been practicing it. I froze, not because the whisper was loud, but because it was soft, too soft, like it came from a mouth pressed right against the wood. No one else should have known my name. Not here, not in a place I'd been renting for 6 months. I stepped back, the glass trembling in my hand. First thought, call the police. Second thought, I don't want them thinking I'm crazy. What would I even say? Hi, officer. Someone turned on my closet light and whispered my name. No, I didn't open the door. Yes, I stayed to listen. My thumb hovered over my phone, and then Penny growled. Not a bark, a low, warning growl. Hackles up, teeth bared at that door. She backed toward me, never looking away from the bottom edge where the light glowed. That decided it. I bolted, snatched my keys, and shoved the deadbolt home behind me. I sat in my car, engine off, watching my front door, waiting for it to open. It never did. Minutes dragged, battery at 12%. I called the cops. 2 cruisers rolled up. 10 minutes later, blue lights washing the walls. They searched everything. Kitchen, closets, attic hatch, crawl space, nothing. The hallway closet light was off when they opened it. Coats hung neat, vacuum in place, dust on the floor, undisturbed. One cop gave me the look, the maybe you fell asleep watching scary stuff look. They told me to lock up tight, keep my dog close, and call again if anything else happened. Then they left. I tried to sleep in my locked bedroom with Penny curled against my legs. Every time the air shifted or the floor popped, I told myself I'd imagined it, until 3 nights later, when I came home from work and found the closet door wide open, the light on, and written in the dust across the top shelf in a finger's drag, "See you again." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with a baseball bat across my knees, Penny pacing like she knew something was wrong. Every creak made my pulse spike. Morning, I called my landlord. He swore no one had access to the unit but me. No spare keys, no contractors. He came by and changed the locks himself. That gave me maybe a half hour of relief, because when I went to toss out the trash that evening, I noticed every bag in the outside can was cut open, not torn by animals, cut clean, like with a box cutter. Someone had been going through my garbage. That night I triple-locked every door, shoved a chair under the knob, and kept Penny in my room. Around 2 a.m., the sound came again. Click, not the closet light, my bedroom lamp. I sat up, wide-eyed, hand frozen on the bat. The lamp glowed, warm and steady. I hadn't touched it. Penny started barking. Not at the door, but at the corner of the room. There was nothing there, just shadows. But her eyes tracked something moving along the wall. Her growls followed it until they landed squarely on the closet in my bedroom. The same closet I'd cleared earlier. The knob turned. Slowly, deliberate, like whoever was inside didn't care if I heard. I lunged, slammed the chair against the door, and called 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I whispered, panicked, listening to the knob rattle, and then it stopped. By the time police arrived, the closet was empty again. Not a footprint, not a smudge, just the faint smell of something stale and rotten inside, like someone had been sitting there a long, long time. I couldn't live there anymore. I packed 2 suitcases and left the rest. My landlord wasn't happy. I didn't care. A week later, new place across town. Fresh locks. Security system. For the first time in weeks, I thought I might sleep. That lasted 2 nights. On the 3rd, Penny barked again at my new bedroom closet. I sat up, heart pounding, phone in hand. The door was closed, the lamp off. Nothing moved. I crept closer, bat already. My hand shook as I reached for the knob. I twisted it open fast, yanked the door wide. On the top shelf, resting perfectly center, sat my old glass of water, the one I'd left on the coaster in my previous home the night everything started, the rim smeared with fingerprints, and on the inside of the glass, written in condensation, 2 words I'll never forget. I'm back. People think home invasions start with a break-in, a shattered window, a forced lock. Sometimes they start months before you realize anyone's even there. Emily was a nurse in Denver, working nights, living alone in a 1-story bungalow. She noticed little things at first. A half-empty cereal box suddenly gone. A sweater she swore she hadn't worn tossed across a chair. The bathroom light left on when she came home. She blamed exhaustion. Long shifts blur your memory. Until one morning, she stepped out of the shower and froze. On the fogged bathroom mirror, someone had drawn a smiley face with their finger. She didn't panic, told herself she'd done it absent-mindedly. Next day, there was another one. This time, no mouth. She started checking the locks, obsessively, bought cameras for the front and back doors. Nothing ever showed. She never saw anyone enter, never heard a sound in the night. But she kept finding things moved. Shoes in the wrong room, her bedspread turned down, and always the mirror drawings. One night, homesick, she curled on the couch with tea, cameras silent on her phone screen. The house was quiet. Just past 1 a.m., a faint thud came from above her head. The attic. Another thud. Then the groan of wood shifting under weight, like footsteps. Her breath caught. She lived alone. Then the worst sound of all. The pull string to the attic ladder, gently swinging, tapping the ceiling like someone up there had just touched it. Emily gripped her phone until her knuckles whitened. She opened the camera app. Front door, back door, nothing. No alerts. But she knew what she'd heard. She hadn't pulled that ladder in over a year. The string swung again. Tap, tap, tap. She dialed 911, whispering that someone was in her attic. The operator told her to stay calm, stay on the line. She barely had time to respond before a voice, muffled, low, drifted down. Emily, her name, clear enough to rip away every excuse. She pressed against the wall, whispering frantic details. The operator said officers were on their way. Then a new sound, the ladder creaking as weight pressed onto it, slowly unfolding, inch by inch. Whoever was in her attic wasn't staying there anymore. Emily bolted, slammed her bedroom door, locked it, shoved a dresser against the handle. Her terrier barked wildly as heavy footsteps descended the ladder, bare feet on hardwood, slow, dragging, pacing the hallway outside her room. Emily, the voice called again, closer, the knob twisted. The door didn't open. Whoever stood there just breathing seam, measured, patient. They were listening for me, though I was listening them. Sirens bled faintly into the night, blocks away. The person outside exhaled once, disappointed, and walked down the hall. Kitchen, living room, cabinet clicked, glass copper from near floor like they were getting into a vent. You're loud when you sleep. Stomach turned. They'd been under there long enough to map my habits. The smoke chirped again. Door unlocked. Then, back door locked. He was testing exits like a rat with opposable thumbs. I slid the window, swung my legs out, dropped to the yard, and flagged the cruiser. 2 officers entered with me, guns drawn. We cleared rooms, then found the closet hatch. The smell hit first. Vinegar and dust, sweat, the rubber of a camping mat. 1 officer dropped into the crawl space, shoulders brushing joists, beam cutting across ductwork. Clear, he called. Click, then quiet. Hold, he whispered. This is a bed, a nest between the beam kits, wrappers, a stack of hotel toiletries, and a cracked phone showing my Wi-Fi network name. Beside it, a book covered greasy fingers. Inside Wi-Fi pass, my lock's keypad code. Wrong once, corrected. Circles of times. 238, 312, 406, with notes like fridge opens, snoring stops, water, last stage, SAT, move up. Was tonight. Sirens flashed red and blue across the windows. 2 officers stormed in. They searched everything. 1 pulled down the attic ladder, gun up, empty. No man, no footprints, just a nest of blankets pushed into a corner, surrounded by food wrappers, empty bottles, and her missing belongings. Cereal box, sweater, even a half-empty bottle of her shampoo. At the center, a notebook, dozens of pages filled with her name, over and over, different styles, some shaky, some neat. At the bottom of the last page, 1 sentence in block letters. I like watching you sleep. Emily moved out that week. The police never caught him, but every now and then, lying in bed at her new apartment, she swears she hears it again. That faint thud above the ceiling. The knob twisted. I bought the house because of the porch swing. Weird reason, I know. But it reminded me of summers at my grandparents' place in North Carolina. The inspector said the crawl space was tight but dry, the neighborhood quiet, and the smart locks worked great. I moved in with a mattress, 2 suitcases, and a coffee maker. Freedom. By week 2, I noticed little things. The fridge light felt warm when I got home, like it hadn't been long since it was opened. A spoon in the sink I didn't use. My phone charger unplugged. Nothing big enough to call the police about, just enough to make me feel clumsy. I set my phone to notify me whenever the front door opened. A few days passed, then Thursday. Alert. Front door unlocked. No one else had access. The camera live view showed my empty hallway, and the porch swing moving in its reflection, like someone had just brushed past it. Wind, I told myself. Fat-fingered the app, maybe. But inside, the air smelled faintly of vinegar and dust, like basements after a flood. I checked every room, then crouched to look through the floor vent. Warm air breathed on my face, a thin draft, like the house. Exhaling. Something caught the light. A small flat shape wedged between joists. I grabbed a flashlight and unscrewed the vent. The beam found it. A hotel-sized shampoo, half empty. Not mine. Tight but dry, the inspector said. He didn't say occupied. That night I slept with shoes on and keys in my pocket. I set my phone to record, screen down on the kitchen counter. At 2:41 a.m., I woke to a gentle thump beneath the floor, followed by a crawl, slow, patient, directly under my bed. I didn't move. The sound was unmistakable. Elbows and knees dragging across plastic sheeting, boards flexing against weight. It traveled from one side of the bed to the other, paused, then shivered the vents. A finger tapped the underside of the metal grate once, twice, like a knock you weren't supposed to hear. I slid off the mattress and pressed my ear to the floor. The crawl resumed toward the kitchen. A minute later, the fridge hissed open. I called 911. gun, whispering. Anyone else live with me? Number. Weapon? Number. Could I leave safely? Maybe. Through the bedroom window. I cracked it and listened. Nothing in the yard. Everything underneath me. The hatch wasn't in the kitchen or living room. It was in the hallway closet, 6 feet from my door. The crawling grew louder, not subtle now. Whoever it was had learned the map of my house from the underside. The boards telegraphed their path. Beneath the hall, beneath the closet, beneath the trap. Soft scrape, the hatch lifting, wood on wood. A breath of colder air puffed across my toes. I braced a chair under the handle, heart in my mouth. Careful steps in the hallway. My phone buzzed. Front door locked, then front door unlocked. My smart lock was changing state without me touching it. A shadow slipped past the gap under my door. The handle jiggled once, twice. Silence. Then, just loud enough to hear, someone whispered to the lock, a short, coded murmur, like a string of numbers repeated from memory. The deadbolt thudded back. The door didn't open. Whoever stood there just waited. Their breathing seeped through the seam, measured, patient. They were listening for me the way I was listening for them. Sirens bled faintly into the night, blocks away. The person outside exhaled once, disappointed, and walked down the hall. Kitchen, living room, a cabinet clicked, glass clinked. Then a whisper from near the floor, like they were talking into a vent. "You're loud when you sleep." My stomach turned. They'd been under there long enough to map my habits. The smart lock chirped again. Back door unlocked, then back door locked. He was testing exits like a raccoon with opposable thumbs. I slid the window higher, swung my legs out, dropped to the yard, and flagged the incoming cruiser. 2 officers entered with me, guns drawn. We cleared rooms, then found the closet hatch ajar. The smell hit first, vinegar and dust, sweat, the damp rubber of a camping mat. One officer dropped into the crawl space, shoulders brushing joists, beam cutting across ductwork. "Clear," he called. "Clear, then quiet. Hold," he whispered. This is a bed, a nest between the beams. Blankets, wrappers, a stack of hotel toiletries, and a cracked phone showing my Wi-Fi network name. Beside it, a notebook covered in greasy fingerprints. Inside, my Wi-Fi password, my lock's keypad code. Wrong once, corrected, circled. Pages of times, 2:38, 3:12, 4:06, with notes like fridge opens, snoring stops, water runs, last page, SAT, move up. Saturday was tonight. They canvassed the block, but he was gone. Slipped out before the sirens turned the corner. The officers photographed everything. The nest, the notebook, the tiny shampoo, the flattened spot where someone had spent hours listening to my life through 2 inches of wood. Forensics dusted the hatch and vents, smudged partials. They bagged the notebook and broken phone. On the screen, a browser tab was open. The manual for my exact smart lock. Instructions for pairing a guest device. He hadn't guessed my code by luck. He'd waited underneath my floor for weeks, listening to the beeps, memorizing my mistakes, testing doors when he knew I'd be in the shower or asleep. When he couldn't see, he learned the sound of numbers. I stayed at a friend's. By morning, a locksmith changed everything. Deadbolts, keypad, the whole system. A contractor sealed the crawl space with concrete and steel. I told myself it was over. 3 days later, a plain manila envelope arrived with no return address. Inside, a single cheap, glossy photo. The angle was strange, low, slanted, pointing up at the underside of my porch swing. In the corner of the photo, reflected in the swing's metal bracket, a blurry figure crouched beneath it. The porch light washed his face into a smear, but his hand was clear, 2 fingers raised like a peace sign. On the back, in block letters, I like the new code. I sold the house. I don't use keypad locks anymore. And sometimes when a room goes quiet, I catch myself staring at the vents, listening for a crawl I pray I never hear again. I grew up in a house with too many windows. My mom loved natural light. so every wall had panes stretching floor to ceiling. Curtains, yes, but thin ones. At night, the outside pressed in, black glass reflecting your face until headlights or lightning reminded you the dark was deeper than reflection. I moved back temporarily after college, saving money. Small town in Ohio, safe enough on paper, but the windows still made me uneasy. They gave me the feeling that if I stood too long in one place, I wasn't just looking out. Something might be looking in. One autumn night, just after midnight, I was reading on the couch. The curtains swayed faintly. Even though no vents were on, my eyes drifted to the window behind them. A shape leaned there, not outside, not inside, just pressed against the glass so close that the curtain clung to it. A pale outline, like a forehead, cheekbone, and lips breathing fog against the cold pane. I jumped up, nearly dropping the book. The curtain swayed back in place. My pulse thundered. I pulled the fabric aside in one quick sweep. Nothing, just blackness, my own reflection, pale and shaken. I tried to laugh it off. Sleep deprivation, right? But when I locked the front door that night, I noticed something at the bottom edge of the glass, an oily smear, the size of a nose pressed too hard against it. The next morning, Mom brushed it off. Kids fooling around. You're too on edge. But that evening, when I came home from work, another window had a smear, too. This one higher up, like someone tall had pressed both palms flat against the glass. That night, I dreamed of faces in the glass. When I woke at 2:44 a.m., the curtain in my bedroom stirred, though the window was closed. I reached for my phone light, and on the inside of the curtain, faint but clear, were 4 long drag marks, downward, like fingertips pulling the fabric toward the floor. I stopped sleeping by the windows after that. I dragged my mattress into the hallway, away from the glass. Mom thought I was ridiculous. She'd lived in that house 20 years, never once scared. But she didn't notice the details, the way objects near the window shifted when we were gone, the way the dog refused to sit in the living room after dusk. The police came once after I called. They walked the perimeter, saw no signs of forced entry, no footprints in the soil under the windows, no pry marks. Probably raccoons, they said, though raccoons don't leave oily palm prints shaped like human hands. For a while, things quieted. No smears, no curtains pulled. I tried convincing myself it had been stress. Then one night I got home late and found the front window cracked open an inch. I knew I'd locked it that morning. Mom swore she hadn't touched it. I shut it, latched it, double-checked. At 3 a.m, I woke to the sound of that same window sliding open again. Slow, deliberate. I held my breath, clutching my phone like a weapon. The dog barked once and then whimpered. Backing under the bed, I crept toward the living room. Each step heavy. The curtain billowed out like breath. And then I saw it, a hand, reaching in, long fingers pale in the glow of the streetlight. The hand groped the air, testing for obstacles, sliding silently across the sill. I froze halfway across the room. The curtain rippled, and then softly, a voice whispered from the dark beyond the glass, "Do you always leave your lights on?" I slammed the window shut with all my weight. The hand withdrew instantly, vanishing like it had never been there. I locked it, shoved a chair under the frame, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. By the time the police arrived, the yard outside looked empty. They shone their flashlights across the grass. Nothing. No footprints. The soil under the window looked undisturbed. The officer asked if I'd been dreaming. I led him to the window, pointing at the oily smear left where the hand had pressed. 5 perfect fingers splayed across the glass. He stared at it for a moment too long, then cleared his throat and said it could have been mine. He didn't write a report, just told me to stay alert. That week, the windows stayed clean, but every night I woke to the sense of someone standing too close. My dreams showed me pale faces at the glass, not moving, just watching. On Friday, I decided to sleep in my car instead. I parked down the block, angled so I could see my house, curtains drawn, porch light on. At 2:30 a.m., movement flickered in the living room. The curtain shifted. A shape moved behind it, too tall to be my mom, too stiff to be a trick of light. And then, one by one, the other curtains stirred too. Kitchen, dining room, even upstairs, like someone was testing them all at once. I wanted to run inside, scream, call the police, but I sat frozen, gripping the wheel, watching shadows move where no one should have been. The porch light flickered, then it went out. When it came back on, every curtain was perfectly still again. Mom insisted nothing happened that night. She swore she hadn't heard a thing, but I couldn't shake the memory of those shifting curtains. I packed to leave the next day, told her I'd find an apartment closer to work. She rolled her eyes but didn't stop me. As I loaded my car, I noticed something under the front window, the soil disturbed in a long groove, like someone had lain there, pressed tight against the wall, night after night. I moved out that week. New apartment, 3rd floor, no ground-level windows. For the first time in weeks, I slept with my curtains open, trying to prove to myself I was safe. It worked for a while, but 3 weeks later I came home from work to find a single envelope on my kitchen counter. No signs of forced entry. Inside was a Polaroid. It showed me, asleep on my new bed, curtains open, streetlights spilling across my face, and in the corner of the photo, barely visible in the reflection of the glass behind me, a pale hand pressed flat against the window.